takeaway from our service is patriotism. That it's bigger than we are. That we're here for more than just us. We've got to stand for something. We've got to stand for somebody and stand up for those who can't. When I first enlisted, I came straight out of high school, so I learned how to be a man. I learned what it is to be a soldier, a patriot, what we're put on this earth for.
Well, the first school I went to was in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was for jet mechanic school.
Okay.
So I was there for, I think, 13 weeks. And then they allowed the first top 4 people in the class to pick their duty stations. And I happened to be in the top 4, so I picked California. So I went to El Toro, California. That's right outside of Santa Ana. Just a little over a year, 63, summer 64. Well, I was assigned to the flight line, which you're still a jet mechanic, but going to parachute packing school, I went to a lot of schools. And I mean, you learn how to do everything on a jet. Pack the brakes, the ball bearings in the brakes, pack parachutes and put them in the plane, hook the pilots up before they left with their oxygen and all that. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I enlisted when I was in high school, so I was 17 years old. So other than sports and family, that was about it. It was just a childhood dream ever since I was 4, 5, 6, real young. That's what I played, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a soldier. It was a little hard at first, especially when I went to basic training. And then they got kind of acclimated at it, and a couple months later I went to Iraq. I grew up in a poor community in the mountains. I grew up in a holler, so there was not much diversity in there. And it was really a lot of the family. My high school, we had 300 students that went to the school. So going to boot camp, you had all walks of life. You had people that were wealthy, you had people that were borderline poverty, you had whites, you had blacks, you had Indians, you had Asians, you had even foreign. We had a guy from India who was in the process of getting his American citizenship. So it was definitely an eye-opener. Everybody had different ways of doing things, different ways of communications, different religion. It's the first time I've been exposed to anybody of a different religion. So, but you learn to respect everybody. You had 60 men all in one barracks or all in one room. You shared, everything was open bay. You shared your commodities and resources, and you learned to get together despite some of the differences other people may have. There was times when we didn't agree on things, but you worked it out as adults, or we thought we were adults then.
My first tour that I served in the military was, other than basic training and then airborne school, which is at Fort Benning, Georgia. So June 20th, 1985, I left and went to Fort Benning, Georgia. October, I graduated from airborne school. So I went through basic training, had like the weekend off. I graduated on a Friday. The following Monday, started airborne school to learn how to jump out of airplanes. Spent 3 weeks learning how to jump out of airplanes. And then I took 2 weeks leave and went to Korea and was stationed in Korea for 13 months. And it was Camp House, Korea, which is up on the northern, you're not in the DMZ itself, but just below it. And I celebrated my 19th birthday in Korea.
Oh, wow.
Which was a very eye-opening experience. Actually doing patrols on the DMZ, because you spend 3 months on the DMZ. You do 1 month as a quick reaction force, 1 month on the guard post, and then 1 month out doing patrols on the border within the DMZ itself. And so here I was as a 19-year-old setting up live claymores with live ammunition, and God forbid if you lose anything, or if somebody's hat falls off, or you don't have a magazine that you thought you had when you left, because you go back out until you find it, because there's no proof that nobody was there. So you can't leave anything. So it was a completely eye-opening as far as what the real world was, what was going on. It's a lot different than just being at Bearden High School.
So the advice I received for boot camp and Army life, everything was going to be a test. That was an old Vietnam veteran. He retired, and he was telling me even the smallest task you may do, somebody's going to assess you over that and grade your integrity and your honor and your capabilities. So even though it may seem like a small task, go 110% at it.
I think I needed that structure in my life, and it was good that I had somebody telling me this is the way it's done. When you make your bunk, you roll it, and it's 6 inches exactly left over in the sheets. Everything was structured. Mm-hmm. So it was fun.
Was it still like that in during active duty, or
It was.
Okay, so it was just as strict in active duty.
It was, because you still had inspections. I mean, somebody walked through the barracks every morning after you were up and ready to go to work.
There was no conflict whatsoever between my civilian job and my Air National Guard job. As a matter of fact, the first time I tested for captain, I was deployed and I did my interview for the captain on the telephone while I was deployed. And I didn't get promoted because I couldn't read them. I couldn't see what they wanted me to shut up or talk more and actually see what they wanted. So I was just doing it on a phone, and it was kind of tough at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to catch my time here. The next time it came around for me to test for the captain, I did the testing and the interview and all of that, and by the time they announced that I had gotten promoted, I was deployed. So my daughter went to the promotion ceremony, and they presented her with the badge and the helmet. And I was actually in Kyrgyzstan when that happened, and I got to watch it on the news. They sent me a clip of the video news of me getting promoted, which she reminds me quite often that I didn't get promoted, she did.
Yeah, so my civilian responsibilities while I was on orders is very, very challenging. Especially being an engineer, because we would go do rotations, for summer AT for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It wasn't a typical 2 weeks like most reserve units see, so that was definitely challenging. And then also some of the extended drill periods, where we'd have to drill like on a Thursday or Friday, that would definitely cut into production time. And so one thing that really comes to my mind is when I worked in the coal mines, because it's very production driven and, they run very lean. So, when one person or one man or woman's out, it definitely impacts production. And so I would try as much in advance to schedule that. But, there would be times when we would have to, like I said, we'd have some kind of event going on. I'd have to go there, on a Thursday or a Friday. And, I would try to make it up at work, double back and do another shift or, work an off day or something in that nature. But there definitely was some friction, especially with some of the former supervisors I had. Trying to work it out, try to have communication with them. Like I said, I would come in, I would work on my off days, I would double back a shift, and but still, though, it put a lot of resentment, I guess. And it's even some of my coworkers too. They would be like, how come he's getting off work? I'm going to go work another job. That's what I would try to tell them.
The big stressor between me being deployed, or even it wouldn't even have to be deployed. I did full after 9/11. If I wasn't at work on the city fire department, I was working at the air base. I didn't get a day off for about 4 months because of 9/11 with all of the different things going on. Being a firefighter, we had to be prepared, and they had everything on lockdown, and they had overstaffing, or not overstaffing, but they had increased the staffing levels at the fire department at the airport. Because of 9/11, they had to have more people just in case. And so I went about 4 months without getting a day off, getting to spend any time with my family at all. And in 2001, my daughter was 1. She was born in 2000. So that was a lot of stress on my wife because she was having to work her job and try to figure out how to take care of our daughter. It was very stressful. And one of the reasons that I ended up retiring when I did, because I would have stayed in as long as I could physically do the job, but I came home from a deployment. It was like a 3-month deployment. It wasn't anything long. And my daughter asked me, she goes, "Dad, when are you ever going to stay home for any of my birthdays or for holidays?" And at that point, I had 24 years, or 23 years and some months, but who's counting? And I had the time, and I decided right then, the next drill weekend, I put in my retirement paperwork so I could stay at home with my daughter.
I would not be where I'm at now without the service. I learned so much. I was exposed to so much, how to deal with different individuals, how to deal with stress, how to work under pressure. I would have never had that opportunity without my service. I'm very thankful for it, and it was an opportunity to serve those years that I did.
The most impactful things that I experienced is being helpless, seeing things happening during a deployment. I talked to this one particular kid, and he was from Knoxville, and he decided that when he came back from war, because I was guard, so I would be back at work, he was going to come ride with me on the fire truck to see if that would be something he wanted to do. once he got out of the military, or once he processed through his time. And before I left Kyrgyzstan, I did the dignified transfer because he got killed about 3 weeks later in Afghanistan. And I actually made it back home to go do his memorial and visit his memorial, and got to know his parents once I came back from my deployment. That was very impactful to me because I saw the full circle. And the more I've been involved with the Gold Star families, it just makes you appreciate how much we have thanks to those guys.
I was able to cross-level a platoon sergeant out of Pennsylvania, Kevin Sullivan, and by far he'd been the biggest influence on my life that I've ever had. I think he was very stern. He was a prick, but he knew how to drive you. He knew how to push you. But he was real sincere and real genuine, and I try to model my leadership off of him. Still have a lot of respect, still communicate with him, just have a lot of respect for that guy. So some of the things I learned through him was honor and integrity. Do what you say you're going to do, follow through with it, do the right thing even when nobody's looking.
How was your life different when you came back home?
I gave all my uniforms away, and I said, I'll never wear another uniform, even if it's a scout leader. And I was going to collect my 8 weeks of unemployment and just do nothing. 2 weeks after I got out, my brother saw an ad in the paper, and he said, here's an ad for UPS truck drivers. And I said, I'm not a truck driver. And he said, you really should go apply because they pay well. So I didn't sit around too long. It was 2 weeks later. I was working for UPS in a brown uniform. So I did put on the uniform again.
And how long were you at UPS?
29 years.
All right.
I drove a package car for 2 years and 4 months. And then I went into management, and the rest is history.
I came on the city fire department in 1999. When I was still in the Army, I was out mowing my yard one day, and I saw a fire truck drive by that said Calcium Volunteer Fire Department. I was in Fort Drum, New York. And I said, Volunteer Fire Department? I wonder what that is. So I followed it back and found out that being a volunteer fireman means you're a fireman, you just don't get paid for it. And so I started volunteering as a fire department because I was an instructor at a leadership academy at PLDC. I don't know what it's called now, they've changed the name of it. But I worked 2 days on, 2 days off. You come in every morning for PT, and then watching the students make sure they do the PT, run it right, and you evaluate them on that, and then you had your day off. So I became a volunteer fireman, volunteer ambulance squad, and volunteer rescue squad, and got the bug and decided this is what I wanted to do for a living. And so I got out of the Army when it was time to get out. I went ahead and got out, moved back home, and started working for Rural Metro Fire Department, which is in the county, and until I got on here in 1999.
One of the most difficult things I had to deal with when I first joined the military was come to an understanding about myself. I joined the Army with my cousin. His name was Gordon Scott. We went in as under a buddy program where we went to basic training and advanced individual training together. We had grown up together, we were best friends. I was older than he was, so he always looked, or what I thought, he always looked to me for leadership and guidance. I was kind of the leader of the pack, or so I thought. Basic training went fine. During advanced individual training, though, he was promoted to a squad leader. And being a squad leader, he was responsible for all of the soldiers, the 10 soldiers that were in his squad. Well, I was one of those soldiers in his squad. I guess the tables were turned on me. I was kind of used to being the leader. Well, at that point, I had to be a follower. And it took me a long time to realize that I was, well, let's just say it didn't come easy to me. We had some really heated discussions, but finally I realized that, you know, he is in a leadership position, and I need to swallow my pride and put my ego in check and support him in his leadership endeavor. And so that's what I did. And after I realized that, we got along fine.
We are losing approximately, and it's give or take, and it depends on what studies you look at, we're losing approximately 22 veterans a day to suicide. And I lost 5 friends to suicide that I have served with, and decided that I wanted to do something more. I started a suicide awareness group for here in Knoxville on the 22nd of each month. Up until the pandemic, we would stand in front of Westtown Mall at the corner of one of the busy intersections and hold signs just supportive veterans for Veterans Crisis Line, trying to stop the suicide epidemic that's going on within our veteran community. It's just a matter of just reaching out to somebody. It's nothing more than reaching out on the 22nd of the month. If you know a veteran, reach out and call them.
I really think that joining the Army, going through all of the challenges, all of the training, all of the difficulties, overcoming those challenges and those difficulties has helped me understand exactly what sacrifice and selfless service means.
Patriotism to me is believing in your country, believing in your leaders, respecting the flag. I mean, we fought hard to have that flag flying, and you see people walking on it. That kills me when I see that.
Yeah, me too.
So I guess just believing in your country and standing up for the Constitution. I mean, it got us this far. I think it's a pretty good piece of paper.
Patriotism to me is honoring those who came before us. What our country was founded on, the principles that we were founded on, freedoms, the ability, if you want to do something, that you have the right, as long as it's not against the law. I mean, there's limitations to all of it, but as long as it's not against the law, if you want to do something, you have the right to do something. You should be able to do that. I may not like it, but with my life, I defend your right to believe what you believe.
Patriotism to me is sacrifice, selfless service, and putting other people's needs in front of my own.
Patriotism to me, that's serving your country, whether it's being a uniform member or a firefighter or a police officer or a teacher or just an upstanding citizen. Just serving your country, doing what's right, putting your country and your country members first, buying America, believing in America. You know, we all have our differences and things on the left and things on the right, you know, that I agree with on both sides. And there's things that I disagree with both sides. But, you know, I always try to look at it, you know, what's good for America. I don't want anything personal out of it, right? I want to contribute to it. I think that's what patriotism is. You know, you don't take away from it, you contribute to it. You make everybody's life, you make society better. You don't take away from it for greed or for your own personal gain or your own personal pleasure. And I think just a lot more folks need to get back to that.